Well, hello everybody. I'm Cassandra Donnelly from Creative Passages, and I'm here to present the Hope of the Dragonfly and my art process. So this is done on an 8x10 clay board, and it's a mixed media art piece, and I'm using a lot of my own jelly prints, a lot of which I made in a previous video titled Experimenting with Jelly Printing and Testing Out My New Camcorder. I love to start a lot of my mixed media pieces with collage, and it's especially fun or nice to use your own art for the collage pieces. And I absolutely love jelly printing. It's something that I've only recently got into, like maybe in the last year. And I've only done it every once in a while, so only recently have I really been diving into it. So typically, I fill up my entire canvas or clay board. Actually, I typically work on canvas or watercolor paper. This is the first, maybe not the first ever in my life, but I haven't really done clay board. So I do like the clay board, and I decided to go with it because I saw some other videos where they use the clay board, and for collage, it just seems to work so well. So these completely are my artwork that I'm using for the collage. Different oil pastel drawings with collage. Some of them are like I'm ripping up a collage, like that's a collage mixed with oil pastels. And that's typically my go-to. I make a lot of artwork like that once a week in the psychiatric hospital. On Wednesdays, usually I do collage, and I have to show people how to do it. So usually I will finish those and just kind of use it as an opportunity to de-stress. So there's a lot of that in here, as well as those jelly prints that I made. And even with the jelly prints, so far my style seems to be to kind of mix and match and go different directions, and also add a lot of mark making. I love mark making. So I'm using just Mod Podge to glue these down. I know some people use acrylic mediums. Acrylic medium, in my opinion, is expensive, so I prefer to use the Mod Podge. It does just the same thing, but for a little bit less money. It seems to work efficiently. And what I found is it works best if you dilute it down a little bit with the water. So now I've got them all down, and I just want to add some embellishments with the oil pastels. Again, I love oil pastels. They're kind of my go-to. And I apologize for actually being in the picture. I didn't mean to. I'm sort of new at filming, and I tried out a new angle, and I should have known I would be in there, but that's life. No, you still can see what I'm doing pretty well though. So I'm just adding different marks with the oil pastels just to make it interesting, or maybe to embellish some lines that I already see in there, or to add on some marks that might play on some marks that were already there. Another thing I like to do is melt the oil pastel. So I'm using a heat gun to melt the oil pastels. And actually when you do that, it makes it kind of shiny, and occasionally they'll like run a little bit and kind of spare in there. I just like doing that, especially when I'm combining pours with it. Okay, so this is a 3-hour process that I condensed into about 40 minutes. So now I'm actually going to do some pours, and I do my pours just a little bit different than you might find typically. So this pouring fluid you can get at Walmart or the Dollar Tree. The particular bottles I'm using I got at the Dollar Tree. So what I find, and I'm pouring it just into another bottle there, but what I find is that with the pours, you can make it more transparent or opaque depending on the amount of paint or liquid that you put in there. I'm using acrylic ink, De La Rami acrylic ink, and I'm using the colors of Indian yellow and sort of like a purple plum color, and I'm also using a crimson color. but I already have some pours that were previously made that were sort of like blue and green colors. So what you want to do is just take the entire bottle of acrylic medium, like if it's from the Dollar Tree, or make a small bottle like that. You see those two bottles that I made, and pour it with your pouring fluid, and then you want to add just 1 or 2 drops of the acrylic ink, or you could use diluted, acrylic paint, but you don't want a lot of it unless you want the colors to be really dark. I happen to like my colors transparent, so you've got to go easy on the drops. You could add maybe 1 drop at a time, kind of mix it up, take a look at it, and then I typically add maybe 3 drops or so. And then you pour it, the separate containers onto your canvas or your substrate, and then you can take a stick or a brush and you can sort of mix those colors together. They're going to all swirl. You can just take the pouring fluid and pour it straight, clear pouring fluid and pour it straight over your canvas, and then add acrylic ink drops, but the color where you add the drops will be much thicker and a little less transparent. So now the pouring fluid is very sticky, so I'm taking advantage of that, and I'm adding ribbons and lace and beads and buttons. It's all going to stick. I don't have to bother with glue because it's pouring fluid. It's going to dry sticky. So this is a good time to add all those embellishments, and I love the buttons and the beads, and I'm just kind of randomly putting it on there where I think it might look good. I mean, I'm thinking about where I place the ribbons and the lace just a little bit. So now this is what it looks like at this stage after the pouring fluid has dried. And so I'm going to show you a video. My camcorder doesn't do close-ups that well, so I'm substituting with my phone, but my phone doesn't have enough memory to take an entire video. So here's the close-up of it. And you're going to see me do that elsewhere in the video where I substitute with my phone to get the close-ups. I just wanted you to see what it looks like at this point after the pouring fluid has dried. So I'm going to add a few more embellishments, but typically then I go and add some self-leveling gel to kind of even out the pouring fluid because it doesn't necessarily get a nice even coat on there. So now I'm using some stencils and some pan pastels. And I'm not good at knowing where I get my stencils. I have a huge book of just different stencils, and also I've got some stamps. Now the stamps I can tell you I got at Temu, but Temu doesn't name their stamps and stencils. But I've got my stencils various places. So I'm adding some stamps, and I'm adding some stencils with pan pastels. Well, I'm adding pan pastels through stencil, I should say. Just to kind of give it some more interest, some more marks. And now I'm going to add some sumi ink to it. And I got this, I might have actually got this sumi ink at Jerry's Artorama, although I'm not 100% sure, but it is for sure sumi ink. And I've got this glass calligraphy pen. Now, I got that at Amazon, and it's really nice because I can use it for fine detail. So what I did is I took the bottle of sumi ink, and rather than work straight out of that bottle, I poured it into just a smaller container, and I'm dipping my brush in that container. And occasionally, it'll kind of dribble or spill, which I either wipe up or I decide to just go with it. So I'm just adding little swirly loopy lines just to make it more interesting. So I got a little bit too much there at the top, so what I'm going to do, rather than wipe it up, I'm going to spray it with some water and let it drip and just make it a little drip. And then I'm trying to add some gold paint as well and dilute that down so I have some gold dripping into it as well. I love gold paint. And I use a variety of different paints. Some are just basic cheap craft paint, from Walmart, and others are, Liquitex, paint and golden paint. So I have a variety of different paints that I'm using. So now I'm having more stamps in there. That's a messy writing stamp, and I'm pretty sure I got that at Temu. Now I'm thinking I need a focal point, and I decided that I want to do a dragonfly. I have the theme of dragonflies in my life, so I'm just kind of checking out different ones. And then, unfortunately, you missed me doing the pouring fluid, but I think elsewhere there's going to be another layer of pouring fluid later on. You'll see. So now that's what it looks like after the self-leveling gel has dried and after the embellishments of the pan pastels through the stencils and all the stamps that I've added to it, as well as a sumi ink. So I wanted you to see all the different details of it. And the button. So everything dried and everything stuck. And the self-leveling gel just kind of makes it look like it's embedded in a sea of glass. And it kind of basically evens out the texture. I'm not trying to eliminate all the texture, but I'm just trying to make things look like they're layered. So I'm going to now go back to trying to draw out the dragonfly. My original idea was that I'm going to experiment and draw out various different ones and then figure out which one I like the best by cutting them out. But then I was like, so much for that idea that doesn't look good. I'm going to draw it myself. So I use that dragonfly as my reference because I'm not good at drawing from my head. So here I am drawing the dragonfly. And probably my least favorite part about art making is drawing. But I love painting. I love mixing it all up. I love abstract. So here's just a little trick to try to figure out how to make my wings even. So I took the end of the paper where the one wing was and matched it up on the other side so I know where to put the other wing. So my wings are close to the same size. So I'm just drawing it out, and now this is another trick where I took the paper and I measured one side and put a mark and then dragged it along to the other side to see if my mark, if the wing is the same size. If not, I was going to adjust, but it was. So now I'm drawing it out with a pencil so I can erase it if need be, and I'm drawing it on a piece of uh, just a piece, not tracing paper, but tissue paper, clear tissue paper. So now I'm adding pan pastels, and I'm looking at my phone to try to get it a similar color as the dragonfly in my reference. However, my pan pastels don't exactly have the same colors. They have close. So I have a sort of a blue color there, and now I'm using the sumi ink to trace the edges and to, draw my lines, which I used pencil first to draw some of the dragonfly lines. And now I'm making it stand out a little bit more with the sumi ink. But that ends up later on getting completely covered up. It's hard to believe that this is like 500% faster than the original video because I still seem like I'm slow at drawing. But yep, I sped everything up 500%. I mean, I have a lot of nice lines there. It's just that later on they're going to get covered, and so this part is pretty much pointless. But a lot of art making, you end up doing and undoing, doing and undoing, to try to get the look that you want. So now I'm just coloring in the middle portion of the dragonfly. I mean, it looks pretty good, but the problem is once I get it on my substrate, on top of that background, you can't really see it, so I have to lighten it up. You'll see. I'll explain it once it comes to that part. Alright, so now I'm going back to the pan pastels, and I hold it up so you can kind of see what colors I'm using. So I'm using a blue, and I'm using like a magenta color, and I'm using like a yellowish green color, to try to get the colors of the Dragonfly similar to my reference. There is no light aqua color, so I'm using the sort of yellowish green and a blue to try to make an aqua color. So it doesn't really show up that well. Later I turn to oil pastels, but for now I'm in the pan pastel mode. I'm a little bit more proficient with oil pastels and pan pastels, I think. Alright, so here's a completed Dragonfly, and now I want to go get some fixative because I don't want my pan pastels to smear. So I just sprayed it down, and I don't want my sumi ink to smear. So I sprayed that down. Alright, so I'm not sure what I'm doing at this point. Maybe maybe I didn't get enough workable fixative. I want you to see that. It's Krylon workable fixative. Although I'm sure you can get other types. Oh, I know. The first can I used was empty, wasn't working right, so I had to go back and get another can. So now it could sit in there. Now I'm just going to use a heat gun to kind of dry it out, save a little bit of time. And of course it's blowing all over the place. Alright, so fixative can really save your work from smearing when you go to anything like another layer that's wet. However, just a caution, it doesn't always like work perfectly. Sometimes your previous layer can still smear if you're putting something wet on top of it, but it does help depending on what you're doing. I don't have any problems here with this particular artwork. Just thought I'd throw that in. So this is the final Dragonfly. So what I'm deciding to do is try a new technique, which I've never really done a whole lot before, and that is where you take your brush, you dip it in water, and then you rip it with your hands, and it's supposed to create, you know, you're not supposed to see the edges so much. It's more organic looking when you add it to your piece. So I'm doing that for about half of the Dragonfly. And it's not ripping so easily or so smoothly. So after half of the Dragonfly, I get kind of tired of that technique. But right now I'm still working on it. So you're going to see me try to use an X-Acto knife, and then I don't like the X-Acto knife either, so then I finally resort to scissors. Okay, so here I'm getting out the X-Acto knife. Because I just wasn't getting a good tear. It was just taking a lot of time to do the brush in the water. And for my purposes of what I'm doing for this particular artwork, I didn't think it was necessary. So after trying the X-Acto knife a little bit, I just get out the scissors, and it's so much easier. And why spend so much time doing something if you don't have to? It's just really faster using the scissors. So once I get it cut out, then I can kind of see where I want to place it. And I drew it all out, so I didn't actually get to experiment with the size of my Dragonfly like my original plan, but hopefully I got a good size. Either way, here we go with the Dragonfly. So sorry I got it not so good a view right here, but I'm almost done cutting it out. Again, I have the speed 500%, but it's hard to tell looking at this because it seems slow to me. Alright, so it's just about done. We're gonna test it out. Now I got it in there and I'm holding it up because there is an odd reflection when I lay it down flat. So I'm trying to hold it up so you can see a little bit better. And I decide I like it in that spot right there. But you can see it gets kind of lost with that dark background. But first I'm just going to glue it down with the Mod Podge. I'm going to glue under it and kind of hold it down. And I'm making sure I'm gluing under everywhere. And I'm also going to glue over top of it, you know, and I'm using just a regular small brush for that. And by the way, when I did the stamping earlier, I used permanent ink, stays on ink. I didn't mention that, but I'm looking at that stamp. If you use other types of ink, it might bleed again if you add any wet layers, which I'm going to add some more leveling, self-leveling gel. So now what I'm doing with the X-Acto knife and the brush is there's beads in my painting. And so my dragonfly, my tissue paper dragonfly is not laying down flat. So I want to actually cut around the beads and let the beads pop out so they can be an embellishment, but also so my dragonfly can lay more flat. So that is what I'm doing between the brush and the X-Acto knife. I'm just kind of pushing everything in around those beads and letting the dragonfly lie flat. So I'm just kind of pushing my fingers, you know, around the beads, making sure everything's flat. Now I'm using my heat gun again to dry it all out. So you can't see it very well. So that's my solution. Liquitex Basic paint, and that's a transparent white. Thinking it'll be transparent, and it's barely transparent. So the lines that I painted on before are going to disappear. However, I don't regret using it because I need my dragonfly to show up a little bit better. So I'm just drawing it on there. I can see it well enough to actually paint it. It's just not bright enough to make it look like a good focal point. Oh, and by the way, when I glued on my dragonfly, I lost a little bit of the bottom end of the tail. So eventually you'll see me paint that on with the white. So I'm just painting it all with this transparent white, hoping that I could still see my lines, but I really couldn't. But it is a really pretty color. It's almost like a pearlescent color. So here I'm adding on to the tail of the dragonfly, which I plan to go back over with the sumi ink. I thought it would show up better if I had the white before I put the black on. Okay, so now I am I think I added a purple glitter paint over top of everything. It didn't really do that much, in my opinion, and it took some of the white transparent paint off in certain areas. So I just go back and forth trying to even that out. And I think at this point I also put another type of puffy glitter paint that's clear and crystallized over top of it as well. Okay, so this is the puffy clear paint with crystals in it. I love those crystal paints with a little bit of glitter in them because I usually use them as a glaze and then they dry clear and you just see the glitter. Okay, now I'm going back and adding to the tail a little bit more, kind of fix it all up. Dragonflies are always sparkly, that's why I wanted to add some sparkles to it. Now I'm going back over the edges of the dragonfly as well with the sumi ink. I haven't done a lot of work with sumi ink, to be honest with you. I'm sort of new to it, but I do love it, and I love using that glass pen right there, that calligraphy pen. Get so many like fine details with it. So I'm just kind of trying to perfect it. Oh, and I spilled a little bit of ink, sumi ink. So I just that time I think I just blotted it off. That's the only thing it's easy to kind of spill. I actually spilled like that whole small bottle just about. Um, but I edited that part out. That is another reason why you want to put it in a small bottle, because if it was a big bottle, you would have a lot of ink if you accidentally knocked it over. The smaller bottle, it's just a little bit easier to work with. So now I'm back to that purple paint, I think. No, actually I'm using the white clear transparent paint with the glitter. Okay, so this is what I have so far now. I'm brave. I'm just writing my own script, and I'm wondering if you guys like this look or don't like the look. The positive is that when you write your own script, it is very personal. There's not going to be another look that's exactly like it, but maybe it doesn't look as professional. I kind of wanted to get this done. I forgot to mention that when I did start this project, I got some really bad news about my daughter, possibly having cancer, some kind of weird bone marrow cancer. And so this art making was a break from everything. It was just my way of working through those difficult feelings. I really think they made a mistake because we've since got her lab results back, and um, her white blood cells are normal. And the bone marrow cancer, usually you have like either elevated white blood cells or low white blood cells. So we think that it was a front desk lady who called my daughter and gave a message. My daughter's pregnant, and she gave a message for my daughter to tell the OBGYN that she has this type of cancer and to schedule, further evaluations. Well, anyway, so I was dealing with that news. But although we don't have that resolved yet till we go see the doctor again, I'm pretty convinced that she does not have that type of cancer or any type of cancer. And I'm walking in faith that, she's going to be blessed. And sometimes, the enemy will come against you and try to incite fear, but you really got to hold on to the word and the promises of God. Not that bad things don't happen sometimes, because they do, but I just feel like this is not something that God wants to happen, and I don't feel it is going to happen. And I'm going to come against the enemy, and I'm going to declare that no weapon formed against me or my family will prosper in the name of Jesus. So I'm just adding, more work to this dragonfly, trying to get it the way that I want. So I go back and forth between the pan pastels and adding, glittery glazes, paint, clear, transparent paint with glitter, etc. So, and as far as the script goes, I did one layer with my Posca pen, a white Posca pen, and I'm later going to do more embellishments with the writing, the script of it. So in my particular writing, maybe you can't see it, but it says, "The power and light of God has come to make all things new." Because I do feel like we're in a new season, a new era where God is basically shaking off all of the things that got in our way that are not of Him. And then, as long as we're submissive to that process, He's then bringing his great light, and he's bringing his deliverance, he's bringing his power, he's bringing his healing. That's why my daughter having cancer doesn't line up with with that. So, I don't see that happening. I don't see her having cancer. I see God bringing his light. I see him bringing his power. I see him bringing his healing. So the power and the light, the power of God, the name of Jesus breaks strongholds, and it can bring healing. So I just declare healing over you too, through the power of God, through his shed blood, through Jesus shed blood on the cross. He brings healing, and he brings deliverance, and he brings wholeness. So I'm going back over my writing now with just a blue pen. I don't actually think it's even permanent. I couldn't find a thin permanent blue pen, but I just want to make it stand out a little bit, give it a little bit more definition. And honestly, I wanted black. I couldn't find black. I couldn't get any of my black Sharpies to work, so blue it is. And I was like, well, there's enough blue in this painting. It'll work. So it'll be fine. So I'm outlining it all with blue just to kind of make it, I guess, blend in a little bit better, but also stand out a little bit better. I'm taking a look at it. Okay, so now that was my golden glaze. And actually, can't remember if I used that or not. Oh, I know, I did. Okay, so here's what I did. So obviously the transparent white was not that transparent. So my idea is to get it more transparent because it's a little too dark. My dragonfly is a little too dark at this point. I want it to show up more, but I don't want to completely cover over what I did before. So what I did is I took the golden gloss glaze and I poured some of that out, and then I added the transparent white to it. So golden gloss glaze dries clear, of course. It's a glaze, so you just add a little whatever color you want, and you can make your glaze, as transparent, or you can make it more opaque depending on the amount of color. So I just added a little bit of the transparent white to the glaze to make it more transparent, but to have a hint of white. So it can show up better. And that's a good level. I'm satisfied with that. So now I'm going to go back, and I think that the white of the script is standing out too much in stark contrast to the dragonfly. So I'm going to go back and add the puffy crystal clear paint to it to make it not stand out so much, to kind of make it blend in just a little bit better. So that is what I'm doing now. So I guess I could have, printed these letters out on the computer, like the script, and then put them on like little pieces of background. Maybe that would have looked better. I don't know, but I'm satisfied with this. I'm just curious about your thoughts. Or the thing is, I also didn't have any stencils with, well, good sense, enough stencils that would be the right size for this to make the printing. So, I just have to assess in the future how I want to do like scripts and writing and things like that. I had a really pretty background, but I just thought it needed a focal point, and then I really thought it needed those words, because I felt like that's what God was saying to me. Like, why does God want me to do a dragonfly? Well, he's showing me that there's protection there, that the dragonfly can be a symbol of hope. It can be a symbol of like regeneration or rebirth, I think, and newness. And we're coming in this season where, a lot of new things are going to be happening and being birthed right now. And honestly, there was this one time I saw this dragonfly outside at night, and it and my cameras outdoor, my security cameras captured this little dragonfly just buzzing around. It was the cutest little thing to see it buzzing around at night in my security camera. So I think of this, it's almost like a symbol of hope in the darkness, although maybe you don't typically see dragonflies at night. Um, but the symbol of hope that's emerging despite the scary things that we're going through. That's kind of how I saw this dragonfly, anyway. And no matter what happens around, because there's going to be a lot of shaking, there's going to be things that happen that are probably scary to us, but God showed me that the believers are going to be, protected, and God's going to be their strong tower. So during the shaking and what might appear to be dark and scary, God's light is going to be there for those who call out to Him. His protection is going to be there for those who call out to Him and who, repented from any wrongdoing and have called out to God to be their Lord and Savior, their provision, their hope. Told myself I wasn't going to preach, but I guess it's hard not to, because it's like it's in me. I'm creating this art. I'm working through something that's scary, but yet God's saying so much more to me. And even the birth is prophetic. Like my daughter's giving birth, that's prophetic for all the things that are, we're about to give birth to in the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is expanding right now. So I'm still not happy with the colors, so I'm getting out my oil pastels. And these are Artist Gallery oil pastels. And they're really soft, they're really nice. They come in a lot of colors. So I'm going to finally try to get the colors right. I decided I'm just going to make it my own color. I'm not going to worry about the reference anymore. So I wanted to kind of blend in with the colors that are already on my background. So I'm still loosely making it similar to those colors I saw, but I'm not worrying exactly. So I'm adding some yellow, added some pink right there. And I just love oil pastels, where how well you can blend them. They're so smooth. And now I've got that light turquoise color, which I didn't have in the pan pastels, and it's like standing out. So I used a little bit of dark brown over part of the middle there that where I accidentally got oil pastel in this center of the dragonfly that's supposed to be black. So just to kind of bring it back again. And now I'm going back with that glittery, glaze, that the white puffy paint with the crystals in it. To kind of make it sparkle again, because I lost a lot of the sparkle through those other steps that I did. Okay. So now I'm just going back over that middle section with the sumi ink, because it's still not really dark enough. Kind of accidentally covered it over with oil pastel, and I'm just using my heat gun to dry it. And then I'm going to be adding the self-leveling. I'm going to be adding the self-leveling gel. So I went back over certain parts of the script with the white Posca pen, because I thought it maybe got covered over, got muted a little bit. But then I'm afraid that it's too white compared to everything else, and then plus maybe I get it too white, and then I have to go back over with the blue pen just to kind of make those edges in there again. Then I decide, this is a lot of work and I could be messing it up, so maybe I should stop. So I'm going to dry it off with the heat gun. Now, this is a self-leveling gel. So basically, you can buy this like any art supply store. You can get it at Amazon. I'm using golden self-leveling gel. And you just apply it on there with the brush and you just kind of go back and forth and get a nice even coat. It's going to dry clear and it's going to basically sink into some of that texture and it's going to even out the texture. If you want all your texture gone, you're going to have to do several layers of it, but you have to let each layer dry. So that's what it looks like wet with the self-leveling gel. Okay, I just wanted you to see it, see all the details. Actually, no, I think that's, I'm trying to remember, is it still, maybe it's partially wet, because if it was completely wet, you wouldn't see it that well. So I'm just showing you some of the details, but it's not completely dry yet. When it dries completely clear, and it makes everything look like it's embedded in a sea of glass, which I absolutely love that. And I love doing the layers embedded with self-leveling gel. So different layers, self-leveling gel, more layers, self-leveling gel. The only thing you got to be really careful of when you do that is so that you don't have so many layers that you get things muddy or you put the wrong colors on top of one another. So that's what it looks like all together. And that is the end of my video.